Greg. We're back for another Lunch and Learn. It's Friday. It's called the Fabric Lunch and Learn these days. But Power BI is under the Fabric umbrella. It's within the world of Fabric. But it's one of those things we have to keep with the times, and the times are Fabric. Lots going on in the Fabric world. We've got a huge number of announcements and things and bits and pieces all going on. Can't keep up with them all. I did a whole session on it on Wednesday, and I think I only covered half of the actual things that got announced. So one of those things. But I want to try and incorporate as much of the new stuff into what we're going to do. I don't have a solid set of content for what we're covering as usual for the Friday Lunch and Learn. It's halfway me learning things too. So, but we'll be doing a bit of research. But I do have a plan, and the plan is this. We're going to build a budget versus forecast versus actual model, and we're going to do it the right way using proper data ops techniques, right? And so I've spoken about data ops a lot in the past. I've done heaps of presentations on it. We did a thing at the Power BI Global Summit on data ops. We did a roundtable with John Kursky and Sam Fisher, and that was great. I love talking about data ops, but I don't actually get a lot of opportunities to sit down and go, right, this is going to be the definitive way that we do it. And I need to know this stuff, right? So I want to do that. So this is going to be me going through the latest of what's happening in data ops and DevOps in the Fabric world. But I also want to take this opportunity to build out like a good quality solution as well. And so the one that I've chosen is budget versus forecast versus actual. The reason why, because I think it covers a lot of interesting things, and it also, like, everybody seems to do some kind of version of this. Everyone's building something that's, showing their budget versus forecast versus actual. I think it's a good, broadly kind of applicable use case that a lot of people do. I think a lot of people approach it the wrong way too. We'll talk a lot about how to model this correctly. We'll talk a lot about how to implement data ops and what is data ops and what are you even talking about, Greg? If you're coming from the accounting side of the fence, you're probably thinking that. And then also some other bits and pieces. So, but what I wanted to do first, and this is maybe a little bit where we can interact together, is we need to decide, when I say budget versus forecast versus actual, and what are we talking about? Like, is that our operational budget? Is it our sales budget? Is it our what budget? Now, when I say budget versus forecast versus actual or this kind of thing, I'm usually talking about a P&L. And I think that's pretty much the most common use case. So what I was thinking is that we do a budget and forecast on a P&L. So what I was going to do is get 3 years worth of P&L data from somewhere. Haven't quite figured that whole piece out yet, but don't worry, I'm good at getting data. We're going to bring that into Fabric. We're going to create a budget for the next 12 months or the next financial year or something like that. And then we're going to create a forecast for the next, I don't know, X number of months, maybe 12 months. Forecasting out 12 months feels like too long though. Maybe we'll do like a quarterly forecast. Maybe we'll do a 6-month forecast, something like that. But we're going to create a forecast solution. So we've got 3 different data sets there then, right? We've got our actuals, which is what's happened. We've got our budget, which is what we've planned at the beginning of the year. That's usually a yearly thing. I don't know, some organizations do it quarterly or whatever. But the budget's going to just be done once and set in stone. And then they're going to do the forecast to, okay, this is how we think we're going to go over the next 6 months or whatever versus our actuals and our budget, or versus our budget. So we can do variance analysis, which is what it's all about. To be able to do this, we need to understand quite a lot of different stuff. So I will start sharing my screen now, and we're going to pull out the whiteboard because it's whiteboard time. I'm going to start using Microsoft Whiteboard because I think Copilot's in Microsoft Whiteboard. I haven't used it and I really want to. Let me share my screen. New whiteboard, and then share screen. Share which screen? This one. You should be able to see a whiteboard. Yes, you can. Wonderful. And then I'll put all your friendly faces over here in case somebody wants to say something. We're definitely recording. Just want to make sure. Yes, Copilot's enabled. Love Copilot. All right. Is anyone using Copilot? Just out of curiosity, has anyone got it enabled other than me and
Oh,
using it?
yeah, it's the best. I mean,
It's
just being able to be present in meetings and
yeah,
not have to
not take
take
notes.
notes,
Yeah, I'm with you,
it's a
man.
game changer.
Yeah. That's what I love is that I can have a meeting with a client. I say, just all I have to do is tell them, oh, we're recording this, turn on it, and then it transcribes everything. And at the end of the meeting, I can be like, here's what we spoke about, and here's all the action items. Oh, it's worth it just for that. Teams integration with Copilot's awesome. Anyway, we digress as always. What should we do? Some kind of brainstorming activity, probably. Let's just do a regular. Yeah, that'll do. Put it here. Brainstorm. We're going to field it. Okay, so what are we going to build? Budget. Oh, does that? Oh my God, I can't even type on it. Type here. I usually use Miro, so I don't know how whiteboard works. Okay, budget. So we've got budget, we've got forecast. Ooh, got actual data. All right. And we're going to do this in a DevOpsy, DataOpsy way, which is cool. So what should I talk about first? What did I say I was going to talk about first? Oh, I also want to talk about, we'll talk about that in a sec. So what are the processes? So let's start with the solution itself, right? So we've got this idea of this is P&L process. So the business process. So the first thing we do when we're doing data modeling is we select a business process, and this is our profit and loss processes coming out of our finance department. This is a process in and of itself because generating your profit and loss, there's usually a lot of steps associated with it, right? So it's an official accounting process. I've got a thing which actually I might go over here and do this. See if I can find it. Oh, it's come up here anyway. So this APQC processes, this is cool. This is a list of standard processes that comes out of the American Process Quality Control something or other of the world. These are processy people. And look at this, number 9 here. I go all the way to the top. The number 9 process is called, oh, I don't have my Zoom it running. Let me run Zoom it. Manage financial resources. Look at that. And then 9.1, perform planning and management accounting. And look at 9.1.1, perform budgeting, planning, and forecasting. Well, that happens to be exactly the process that we're looking at. What a coincidence. So it's the number 1 process. Well, it's the first cab off the rank for this standard process thing. If you're interested in this APQC list of processes, this is literally like a giant list of processes, marketing and selling products, like managing supply chains, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's really interesting and it's good for this kind of stuff. So like we say, we learned this when we went through our the definitive guide to data modeling. The first step to data modeling is picking a process, right? And so this is what we're doing. So this is what we need to be able to do in these processes. We need to be able to develop and maintain budget policies and procedures. We probably won't worry too much about that because that's like a document process. I'm not going to sit here and bore you with creating stuff in SharePoint, but that's part of it. We need to have policies and procedures around how we do it. We need to prepare periodic budgets and plans. In other words, prepare a periodic budget and a forecast or a plan or whatever we're doing. Operationalize and implement those plans to achieve the budget. Prepare periodic financial forecasts. Well, there's the forecasting part. And then perform variance analysis against forecasts and budgets. So look at that. That's exactly the process that I'm talking about here. So these are the processes that we're doing, and particularly this perform variance analysis against our forecasts and budgets. That's the thing we're trying to do. But it's all part of this planning, budgeting, and forecasting process. So there's planning in this as well. Now, there's lots of ways to approach this in the world of Power BI and Fabric, right? And you will see a million different solutions out there. Some of them are like, yeah, you can do planning and forecasting and budgeting inside Power BI. That's awesome. And here's my custom visual that allows you to do that, and et cetera, et cetera. And I kind of don't like any of those because I don't think Power BI is very good at doing budgets and forecasts and planning because you can't enter data into it properly. Yeah, you can kind of enter data into these custom visuals, but you can't really. And also there's an already a Microsoft product that's really good at budgeting, forecasting, and planning, and it's called Microsoft Excel. So just use that. So I'm going to use Excel to do my budget, and I'm going to use Excel to do my forecast. And we're not going to do a
And
plan.
every finance professional breathes a sigh of relief.
Exactly, right? If you're in finance, you should be like, but what about? And so I think there's a bit of a tendency for the analytics world to go, yeah, we want everything in Power BI, which is true, and we needed to model it correctly, and we need to put it into a star schema. All that is true. And we're not saying that we don't want to model it that way, but for the actual creation of the budget and the forecast, just let the Excel people do their thing. They're good at it, and so that's what I think. That's my 2 cents on how to manage budgets and forecasts in Power BI. You don't put it in Excel. Okay. So we're going to create a budget. Let me bring my little whiteboard up. So we're going to make an Excel budget. And we're going to get our actual data. That's going to come operationally, right? So that's going to come out of our finance system. And then our forecast is also going to come out of Excel. Now, here's the little caveat. If we get really advanced, and maybe I will do this if everything's going really well, then I might create the forecast in AI if things are going well, because I think that's an even better way to create a forecast. But we'll think about that. In the short term, to make things easier, we'll just do it in Excel. Okay, what are some of the, so if we're building a P&L actuals, so our P&L actuals will come out of our financial system. It's going to be broken up by the different accounts that are in our P&L. The question is, what is the granularity? So this is the second thing in our modeling data. We need to understand what grain our budget and our forecasts are going to be at, because potentially, so when I say grain, I mean how often are we going to do this? And I think we just do it monthly. We don't need it any more than monthly, right?
It's always rolled up to the month for the budget and the forecast. I mean, and if it's at the daily level, it's just the monthly figure divided
By
the
the number of
days.
days in the, yeah. So I mean, almost every finance person in the world just operates on a monthly basis, and then they need to, often with these processes, they need to close out the month anyway before they can put it in the P&L. So that's part of the process.
Yeah, if we want to get really fancy, there's like all the accruing you do up until the end of the month, and then you have to apply the end of month process to kind of close out the previous. But maybe we're getting ahead of ourselves.
That might be a little bit, yeah. And this is the thing is, like, I'm not a CPA, unfortunately, and I'm not a finance guy. I'm an IT guy that knows a lot about Power BI, and so there's probably some nuances to this if you're coming at this from a finance perspective that I won't cover. I'll probably do something slightly more simplistic than potentially what you'll need. But what I will be able to show you is how to properly build these solutions out, and also how to properly model the data so that you can actually answer the questions you want to answer at the end of the day, which I think is the important thing. And that's what we'll talk about next, basically, is what are the questions that we need to ask this model to be able to actually do the things that we want to do. And, my best friend ChatGPT will probably help me with this too, because that's how we like to do it. So we're doing P&L monthly, but we haven't completed the grain part yet. So we know it's going to be about monthly, and it's going to be by account. So are we going to forecast by each account? And we'll get our actuals by account. Do we budget by each account? I guess we will. So each account will have its own budget. Do we want a concept of some kind of departmental thing? That's usually something people want, because they want to have, like, each department has its own P&L. I reckon that's a good idea. That makes it at least a little bit more complicated. So it'll be by date, by account, by department, and that's about it. I don't think we need to do too much more complexity than that. We'll have a budget, we'll have a forecast, we'll have some actuals. If you start to think about this as a conceptual data model, for those of you on the Power BI side, it's pretty obvious, right? You have 3 fact tables: budget, forecast, actual, and then we have date. I'll just put D for date. We get my lovely mouse-drawn data models that I like drawing. We have account. And we have department as our dim tables. Zit, zit. Oh God, that's a bad line. All right. Anyway, you get the idea. If we decide to make this more complicated later, maybe we will. We'll think about it. Oh, is there someone in the chat? Oh, here we go. There's more in the chat. Excel, the most analytics of the world. Yes. Payroll's typically fortnightly, square pegs and round holes. Oh, that's an interesting point. We could talk about payroll. Let me think about that. That's a different process though, and I don't like to mix my processes. I like a model for one process, and payroll's a different process. And this is where you get in trouble in Power BI. This is something that you will run into a lot. I see it all the time, and I always tell customers that they need to break their models up into multiple models, and they always tell me they're not going to do it, and they just want everything in one. And I say, okay, well, it's your funeral. You're about to pay me a lot of money to mess around. If you're doing P&L, budget, forecast, and actual, as a slight, and because of that slight change in context that Stephen's talking about there, where it's finance, like where it's like it's fortnightly versus something else, that can actually change the whole grain of the model, and then your context gets thrown out for particular things that you're trying to do, and then you start to account for it in DAX and other solutions, right? And so it gets messy, and then it's much cleaner if you just like break those models out into separate pieces. And then you can have things like cross-report, drill through, and use other techniques to get people to navigate through the same, through different experiences, but have like through different models, but still have what seems like the same experience. Like you can have a Power BI app and all this kind of stuff. Anyway, it's a beautifully drawn model. I'm admiring it. Okay, what else is people saying? I could do some benchmarking. That's an interesting idea. We could try and do some benchmarking. End of month usually does accruals for periodic alignments, cost to recognize the attributions in the monthly reporting period. Yeah. Payroll is fortnightly for us. We allocate it to a month. Yes. 1 month you have 3 pay runs in it, and everyone freaks out. Yeah, because payrolls, yeah, it does weird stuff. When you say breaking the model into pieces, do you mean there's multiple fact tables? Could you roughly draw the model pieces? No, so when I mean multiple models actually. So you would have a payroll model. So this is our budget model, or our budget and forecast model. And then you would have a whole other model over here that has a totally new set of facts and dims. I don't know what happened there. So we would have a payroll model, and they would share a lot of the same attributes, which I think this is where people kind of get confused, right? Because payroll is going to have, well, they're going to have employees for one, and then you're going to have like payroll related facts in your fact table. It's going to be your payroll data or whatever, but you're also going to have date, and you're going to have other dimensions, based on your payroll stuff. So this is model 1, this supports all of your payroll reporting, and this is model 2, and this supports all of your budget reporting. So you can think of these as, if you're in Power BI world, as 2 different data sets and or semantic models, right? The new name for them. So totally separate models makes it so much easier to live your life this way. And I've taken the Pepsi challenge a number of times with customers where they say, no, it has to be together. And I've won every time. So far, no one has been able to challenge my theory, or my hypothesis, I guess it is at this stage, that these things need to be broken into separate models. So if you can find a way to do that, if you're a special, the only reason that people say that they have to have everything together is usually some kind of either cultural reason, like they just want it there, or a technical reason, like they say it has to be together because IT won't allow us to have access to, or something like that. But in Power BI, you can do whatever you want, right? So break it up, break up your models. It's important to me.
One other question, Greg. Previously, I've usually put the forecasts and the budgets into the same table, so that because people are often, in a slicer going, I want to look at the budget now, or I want to look at the forecast. What's your experience with that? Because I know you could use field parameters and stuff like that to swap between. Do you find it better in multiple facts?
It's totally fine as long as the grain's exactly the same, which it often is with budget and forecast. So you can find in the time. So this is kind of like a theoretical. I'll get rid of this payroll one. Actually, can I loop it? This is like our hypothetical ideal model. But actually, if the grain is exactly the same in these three tables, you could actually mix them together into the same thing. The reason to move to a new fact table is because your grain is different, and your actual grain is almost always different to your budget and forecast grain, because actual often has a lot of extra dimensions and stuff like that in it, right? But budget and forecast is often not. It's often generated using the same types of techniques or whatever, and so that'll often be at the same grain, and you could do that. So if the grain's the same, then you're just going to have one table, and it's going to have another column, which is whether it's either a budget value or a forecast value. But I would say you would start with this because this is the safest approach. And then where there's opportunities to consolidate, maybe you consolidate. But yeah, I mean, almost always you're going to have, if you've got completely different transactional systems, if you like, these are all different transactional sources, you should think of them as separate facts. I think that's the safest way to approach it. How many single sources of truth for the model pieces? So this is all underpinned. So let's say we've got this actual data, and that actual data also has payroll data into it. This is all underpinned by data sets that all might come from the same place. So here's this actual data. It goes into this model, but it also might go into all your other pieces. So this is your single source of truth, if you like. So your underlying tables, and this is where Fabric comes into its own, right? Because we separate the idea of there being a Power BI semantic model and then the source system. A lot of people, what they're doing is that they take their source system, their transactional system, you get your zero data out or whatever it is, and you pull it directly into Power BI. And then you go, okay, well, now I pulled it into a semantic model, and now I want to reuse this data. And then you get into this muddle of like, well, do I reuse the data set? Do I create another report on top of a data set? Under Fabric, you bring data into your golden curated data sets, and then they're the single source of truth. And then you're using those tables in different areas, but they're curated so that in a way that you've got governance and all of that over that. And that's why I want to show this whole process of building it out properly using data ops in Fabric for this exact reason, so that you can have a single source of truth and have everything organized correctly, so that your Power BI works, but also you can create other solutions on top of it. You can do AI and ML. You can create apps that update your budget, whatever you need to do, and it updates your single source of truth. One of my clients wanted it in separate tables. They wanted to add the refresh frequently, budget not so often. So that's a really good use case as well, right? Is that you've got different fact tables might have different refresh frequencies, and that's why it's safest to have them as separate things, because you might not be able to do that, and it gets complicated if you're trying to manage multiple things. So that's a great point. Okay. So we're going to build our beautiful budget versus actual model. It's going to look something like this. And then we're going to ask it a bunch of questions. And I'm just going to use ChatGPT to generate these questions, because otherwise I'll be sitting here typing forever, like a bunch of different questions. I'm using the new ChatGPT 4.0. Love 4.0. It sounds like Scarlett Johansson. No, it doesn't. Just kidding, Scarlett. Sorry. Okay. You actually, should I do it on that? Nah. Yeah, let's do it on that. Let's have fun. All right. Let's use Scarlett. She's called Sky. No, Sky is not available anymore. There's another one. They took her down because she sounded too much like Scarlett Johansson. But we'll talk to her and see if we can get her to act as a, what is this person? This is the head of finance for a medium-sized company. Hope it works. Hi. Okay, so you're the head of, I want you to act as the head of finance for a medium-sized company. We're building a budget versus forecast versus actual reporting system. What are the sorts of questions that you would ask of that reporting? Like what sort of reporting do you want?
Absolutely. As the head of finance for a medium-sized company, I would want the budget versus forecast versus actual reporting system to be comprehensive, insightful, and actionable. Here are some key questions and types of reporting I would be interested in. 1, accuracy and variance analysis. How closely do our actuals match our budget and forecast? What are the key drivers for any significant variances? Are there specific departments or projects where variances are consistently high? 2, trend analysis. How do current actuals compare to the same period last year? Are there any seasonal trends or patterns in our financial data? How has our forecasting accuracy improved over time? 3, performance metrics. What are our key performance indicators, KPIs, and how are we performing against them? Are we meeting our financial goals and targets? 4, revenue and expense breakdown. How are different revenue streams performing against budget and forecast? Are there unexpected expenses or underutilized budget allocations? What is the breakdown of fixed versus variable costs, and how do they compare to our budget and forecast? 5, cash flow analysis. How does our cash flow position compare to our budget and forecast? Are there any cash flow issues or upcoming periods where cash flow might be tight? 6, scenario planning and sensitivity analysis. How would changes in key assumptions, e.g. sales growth, cost inflation, impact our budget and forecast? What are the potential financial outcomes under different scenarios? 7, operational insights. Are there operational efficiencies or inefficiencies highlighted by the variances? How are specific initiatives or projects impacting our financial performance? 8, compliance and risk management. Are we compliant with all relevant financial regulations and standards? What financial risks are we exposed to, and how can we mitigate them? For the reporting system itself, I would want dynamic dashboards, interactive dashboards that allow for drilling down into details and filtering by different dimensions.
Well, we can do that.
Department.
All right. Thanks, ChatGPT. You're awesome. Now, there was some stuff in there that, and I might need to update my, oh my God, what's happened to my ChatGPT? It's all over the place. Is this scrollable? Refresh. Should be able to. Variance analysis. Here it is. This is what she just said. Okay. I love how it, like I said something halfway and then it picks it up really well. It's really good at actually interpreting what you say. It's quite impressive. Okay, so she asked for accuracy and variance. So how closely do our actuals match our budget and forecast? Can do. Let's put that in the list. That's a good one. Text. Oh, whiteboard. How do I move you around? All right, well, that's one question. What are the key drivers for significant variances? So what causes the variances? That's an interesting one. So we can put that in, see if we can answer that question. Are there specific departments or projects where variances are consistently high? We haven't spoken about adding project in here. Could we add in project? Maybe. We'll think about project. We've got departments though. I really want to know. Oh, I can move it around. Okay. How do the actuals compare to the same period last year? Is there any seasonal trends or patterns in our financial data? How has forecasting improved over time? There are very good questions as well, so we'll add those in.
Not enough people actually track how the accuracy of the forecasting. It's such a massive hole.
Yeah. I think that's a really interesting one, right? And it's an interesting thing to model, just, you know, like as a. It's amazing how many questions you can ask of like just a simple area. Okay, I think then what are our key performance indicators? How are we performing against them? Building like a KPI type system, I think, is probably out of scope for this, because that's a whole other approach that we can talk about. Maybe if we get to it, we can talk to it, but I don't want to muddy the water too much. Are we meeting our financial goals and targets? We could set some goals and targets, because we've got, well, that's kind of what budget is our financial goals and targets. So we could say, well, are we meeting them, is the same as saying, well, how do our actuals match against our budget? So similar kind of thing. How are different revenue streams performing against budget and forecast? That's sort of like our account type stuff. Let's stick with these questions for now. I don't want to make it too complicated, but hopefully you get the idea. But if you've got anything that you're like working on and you're a finance person, you're like, I really want to see this, then feel free to throw it in the chat. I'll try and incorporate as much stuff as we can. What's this? We can't show this object. An object was added that we can't display. Okay, well, yeah, we get rid of that. So here's some key questions anyway. How closely do our actuals match our budget and forecast? Let's start building some Power BI, because I know you guys are going to just get impatient if I don't start building Power BI like immediately. I'm just kidding. I know you're all with me. All right. Power BI is loading. We haven't spoken about data ops at all yet. And what is it? And why does he keep talking about it? But don't worry, we'll get there. I liked your pie chart on LinkedIn as well, Michael, I have to say. It was very good, not very good. I've got my little pie chart report here that I made for that. All right. So, see, the good thing about this approach is now we know what our process is, we know what our model's kind of going to look like, and we've got a bunch of questions. And guess what the questions can do? We can just turn these into page titles for our reports. Why not? Might make more than one page for a few of these, but let's just start with the simplest. Ooh. Is that blue? That was a weird formatting thing.
Yeah, as a side note, they need to fix that text copying thing. It's so annoying. It takes even if you copy the text from your page title into the text, it'll completely remove all the formatting you've already set up in the text box.
Yeah, it's not great, I will say. But, all right. I don't like my titles to be too big. I'm on this, my current, not that big, not that small. Like that big? Maybe a little bigger. We should have a logo, shouldn't we? I'm going to work for Aardvark. I'm going to find my Aardvark logo. Aardvarks. Where's the Aardvark? Aardvark, here it is. Okay, so insert image. Fabric logo? No. Pictures. Search pictures. Aardvark. This is my fake company, like what is it? What do they have at Conteso? Whatever Microsoft have. Aardvark distribution, or whatever we are. Okay, and then here we go. More Power BI. Okay, we've got a logo and we've got a title and we've got a page, and we're going to file, save. I finished building our first report, everybody. Are you proud of me? Yeah, I'll save it in marketing. That's fine. Thank you. Thank you, Praveen. Hooray. It's got 0 things on it. What else do we need? We need like we need a text box saying this report built by Greg Ash. And then like a link to my LinkedIn so you guys can all find me and connect with me. What's my LinkedIn thing? It's like Greg Nash 1978 or something. Greg Nash 78. All right, here we go. Oh, I want the text, not the link. Edit link. Fix link. Oh no. Can I paste? No, I can't. Edit. That's the right link. Okay, Control C. All right. Put this down the bottom. Make it right justified, actually, and put it down here. And then we should have help overlay. Oh, we won't worry about that right now. We have a completely blank report. Let's put in a line underneath. This feels like a good use of our time. Rename the page. And then we've got no data in our report yet. But that's okay. We'll save it. Want one piece of data in this report. Let's get data. It's going to be blank. Blank query. Connect. Oh, that didn't work. Try again. I should just open the data transformation. Let's just do that. Open up Power Query. New query, blank query. Equals. What is it? Datetime.local. Fix local now. I saw it. Well, that. Oh, you stupid autocomplete. Look at what it did. There we go. Why is all my Power Query and stuff is all weird? Okay. I want to convert this to a table. Can I do that? Well, maybe I don't need to. Oh my God, I cannot type. This is what happens when you use ChatGPT for everything. Close and apply. It's just like becomes a one row table, right? Yeah, that's what we want. As a card. Make it just a tiny bit smaller. Make it latest. Like 12. And turn off the label. And now we have a refresh date time. Okay, save. So now it's 12:43. If I hit refresh, 12:43:03. Look at that. We have a working report. Can you believe it? Are you setting up a file for the new fabric part? Yes, I am going to do that. Well, that's kind of like I was thinking like maybe I would, yeah. Like maybe we should, I'll just try and build a thing, but I also just want to show anyone using on object editing. That's an interesting question. But yeah, no, I just wanted to set up the file properly. Now, what I want to do actually, so okay, now we can start talking about how we're going to use this file, right? So, okay, we started creating a report. I know there's nothing in it yet, but it is still a report of some kind. And we want to publish this report up into we're going to create a new Fabric workspace, and we're going to do this using like DevOps principles, because we don't want to just make a regular old budget versus actual. We want to have a proper thing. Oh, everyone's talking about on object. Yes, on object is interesting. Okay, so we want to save this. We'll put it in a place that makes sense. So what we need to do for our data ops. So let's talk a bit about data ops before we go any further, and DevOps and all the rest of it. Move over here, and we'll call this Fabric Friday. L and L. Oh, that not work. Okay. So in the world of, where do I even start with data ops? There's so much to talk about. Oh my goodness. Okay. So let's think about how we build Power BI solutions. And this includes Fabric solutions. Anything in this Fabric and Power BI world, right, is that we have this, what we call a value stream. And that value stream is how do we actually, what are the things that we do to create value, being a report that looks awesome. Tick, we love this report. And another way to think of this is a published report. So good at writing, okay? Published with a big green tick, and it looks great, and it's got all of the insights in it, and things are working. So we start at an idea for a report. Hopefully I can draw a light bulb. It's going to look like a skull. Oh no, I'm good at light bulbs, it turns out. Ding. Okay, and then put the, yeah, all right. So it starts out with an idea, and then we have to like create a new Power BI report file, and then we have to write some code, maybe do some data modeling, other bits and pieces, steps along the way, whatever those steps are, and we will talk about exactly what the steps are at one point. We do all of these different activities, and we get our lovely published updated report, right? And this is actually an update. And when we say updated report, it might actually just be one widget in a report. So right now we've got nothing, and we don't have anything, but we do have something to publish. We've got a very basic report with nothing in it. It's just got a title and a refresh date and a built by Greg. Okay. So that's value stream number one. That is from idea to working code is another way to think of this. Okay. Now, this is in the world of kind of software development. This is the value stream that is covered by DevOps. You hear the word DevOps a lot in the development world, and this is the DevOps value stream when it comes to our mere mortals like us. Okay. And basically what DevOps does, and this can be like, we're talking about Power BI reports here, but it can be anything. It can be a web page, it can be an app, it can be a game, it can be whatever, is that in the world of DevOps, you start with an idea and then you end up with working code in production. Working code. So we need to, now that we've got a good idea of what we're going to build, we need to figure out, okay, so what are these steps in here that we need to perform to go from our idea through to working code? And we've already performed one of them, which was to update our Power BI file, right? So I'd made a very simple update to a Power BI file. We need to be able to save that file somewhere. We need that file to then go into to be tested. So let's, if it was a really basic kind of thing, we create our file, we save it into a repository of some kind, we test it, make sure that it works, then we upload it into our development environment. Then maybe the users look at it, right? So get one of your users to have a look at the file. Hey, does this look correct? So that's called, like UAT. And then the users say, yes, that's correct. And then it gets published into your production environment. So makes it available to everybody. Everyone's happy. That's all good and well. Does that make sense? So this is the idea to insight. They call it aha to kaching in DevOps, right? Now in in the world of data ops, we've actually got two value streams we have to think about, which sucks because it makes it more complicated. And data ops includes this because we still want to do this. And a lot of people call it data ops when we're talking about data, like creating analytics solutions. But there's actually a second pipeline here that is also available in data ops. And that's from data entry. So somebody enters some data to insight. Somebody does some cool action that improves your business. There's our tick here. So if someone enters the data, then the data gets extracted, then it gets transformed, then it gets transformed some more, then it gets standardized, then it gets curated, then it gets put into a star schema, then it gets pulled out and you do some data modeling, then you do some data visualization, and you end up with insight. Okay, so this is value stream 2. And no one really talks about this. And this is completely my own device, having come up with having read everything there is to read about DevOps, and I've decided that we have to think of them as two value streams. So we've got our entry to insight value stream, and we've got our from aha to kaching value stream, which is our development value stream, right? And both of them are important, and we need to optimize for both. So we've got a lot going on, right? That means that I have to think about how the data moves through our system, but also I have to think about how do I apply updates to that data using the aha to kaching value stream. So we're going to focus on the first one, which is just creating updates, because that's the one where there's lots of interesting stuff. And then as we go along building our solution, we'll also talk about the second value stream, the data to insight value stream, because we need to optimize that as best we can. The cool thing about DevOps, so DevOps and data ops, so DevOps, it's all the same thing really. It's based on a bunch of different principles that were created that are like a mixture of a few different areas. There's Lean Six Sigma, which is the that came out of the Toyota manufacturing kind of idea. There's the theory of constraints, which is another old process optimization piece. There's agile development and a couple of other bits and pieces all thrown in, safety culture and all this other stuff, right? So it's a collection of principles. A lot of people think DevOps is just environment management, like dev, test, prod type stuff. It's not. It's a collection of a whole different set of principles that it's essentially a way to optimize processes. And nerds went crazy on getting the best possible ways to do this, and so they've got this highly efficient, really good way of optimizing really complex processes like software development and like data pipelines. And so we apply all of these principles to our value streams to actually make them go much faster than you would normally be able to go if you just do your development the old-fashioned way. Theory of Constraints is gold. I absolutely love Theory of Constraints. We can talk about it anytime. Read the Goal, it's called. Here's the book. That's where you start. Eliyahu M. Goldratt is the name of the guy who wrote it. So we want to do is apply these cool principles about process optimization. So what this does is it makes your life easier as somebody who is building this stuff, because it means you're faster and you can provide updates more quickly. And when you create those updates, they work, and that you don't have to go back and rebuild the thing again because it was wrong. And there's all of these things built in to ensure that the work you do, you only do once and you do it correctly the first time, and you end up with it's a lot more fun to develop things because you're not constantly going back and reworking things over and over again. And so the idea behind this is so that to help you guys become better developers, as well as, you know, developing actual practical solutions. Shelley's put a thing on theory of constraints in the thing, in the link if you're interested. So this is process optimization for development. You can think about it that way. So that's what DevOps and DataOps kind of is. So we want to think about our process of actually publishing this report into our workspace, right? Because like the simplest thing you can do is you hit here, publish. Why can't I do that, Greg? Well, you sure can do that, and we'll talk about like the different ways you can publish things, and then start to optimize the process and why we optimize the process as we go. And we'll just do the first publishing little bit. I'm just bringing up my Power BI. I'm gonna create a new workspace, and then that'll be the end of today's session. And then we'll start to get into actually, you know, using these theories to actually build out our budget versus actual. So we'll get a chance to do a little bit of everything. Okay, so I'm going to create a new workspace in my Power BI. I'll bring it over here. Hey, we're going to call this Fabric Friday. This is now we'll call this the production workspace. So this is where the users are going to go for our budget. We'll call it finance reporting. We could give it a domain, but we won't worry about domains right now. Let's give it our Aardvark logo because we love Aardvark. There we go. And we're going to put it on our Fabric trial, which has 22 days left, because it's going to be a Fabric workspace. Okay, and here we go. We've got a Fabric Friday. It's a completely empty workspace ready to be published into. So you say to yourself, okay, I finished. This is the first version of my report. It's really basic, but it works. Save our changes. Let's publish it into our Fabric Friday report, into our Fabric Friday workspace. Done. Got it. We go back here. Hopefully, if I hit refresh, we've got a budget versus actual report. Oh, did I go into it? No, there it is. So you'll see down here, budget versus actual report and a budget versus actual semantic model, which is, you know, a data set for those of you who are used to the term data set. We could create a task flow to outline our solution, and we can start talking about what that is. So all we've got right now is a report and a semantic model that doesn't have anything in it except for the refresh date time. Let's refresh it again. 12:56. Okay. So there's nothing in here, and we actually probably don't even want to, well, we can talk about how we handle that later. But that's worked, right? So we did our publishing value stream. We created a report, and then we published it into prod. We went like this. Here's our prod data set, right? Or our prod workspace. So we skipped over all of this stuff and we just went from there straight to there. So that's the most basic kind of version of that value stream. And most people probably do that right now. That's how you do it, right? Workspace is usually dev, test, or prod. That's right. Yeah. Lakehouse is different with medallion architecture. Someone asking about medallion architecture. We can definitely talk about that. Yeah. Oh, there's some ChatGPT on theory of constraints. This is one of the things that we will talk about, actually, because I think this is a really interesting question. Is that and this is almost like a subjective thing, is that we've got dev, test, and prod workspaces, and then we've got bronze, silver, gold medallion architecture. Does that mean we have dev bronze, dev silver, dev gold, test bronze, test silver, test gold, prod bronze, prod silver, prod gold? Or even more horrifically, you could have dev lake house in dev bronze, in dev thing, gold lake house. So this is a question that we need to answer definitively on how we should approach this. And it's a little bit up to your environment and what your standards are, because you don't necessarily want to create 9 different objects to solve at your workspace and your dev test gold thing, right? So not an issue when you do all your testing in prod. That's right. Just do it all in prod. That's one solution.
And it's also going to be interesting how I've never done it, so I'm really interested to see when we promote between the different workspaces with the reports that are looking at the lake houses. Does that work in the deployment pipelines and stuff to split out which lake house you're looking at and stuff? It'll be fun
you
to see.
Change your sources. Yeah, so you can set up dev, test, and prod sources, and then swap out the parameters. Yeah. So that's going to be really interesting too. So this is all the stuff that we're going to be covering during this season of how we do this stuff, right? So we only got to the point where we literally just did the most simple thing you can do, built literally the most simple report you can possibly build, and we did the most simple version of publishing. So next week we're going to create a Git repository. We're going to create our dev, test, and prod workspaces, and we're going to run through a more official. We're going to have the same simple report for now. We're going to go through a more official kind of publishing process, and then we'll start building out this report, getting in this data model, bringing in these things, and we'll start talking about how we handle the different sources and how we change those parameterizations as well. Well, I think that's plenty to talk about in an hour. So I hope you'll join me in this journey. I promise if you're coming from the finance side, we will be going deep on how to build these finance models as well and that kind of stuff. But we do have to get through this piece of this bit more technical piece of how we do this properly. So stick around. I promise that I'll try and keep it balanced between talking about one side and the other. And then hopefully we can get to a point where everybody has a really solid understanding of how to properly build kind of solutions using the end-to-end kind of Fabric and Power BI frame, bringing all the data in, getting it properly tested, how to properly set it all up, and then publish it into Power BI for your users in an app, right? So that's it. Thanks, folks. If you're watching online, we'll see you next time. And then, yeah, if you're here, feel free to hang around. I'm going to stop the recording. We'll see you soon. Cool.